Hello, and welcome to this edition of Rooted Cosmic Wisdom. I am Amiee. We're here with Alexis and Deb Vera. She is a medium and an energetic healer. And she and Alexis have never ever met. Deb is somebody that I know and I love dearly. And as she and Alexis have never met, Deb is going to be kind enough to do a reading with Alexis as the first part of our podcast to kind of demonstrate what it is. Right now the veils are thin. We're recording this on October 30th. We are the day before Samhain and Halloween, Dia de los Muertos, All Saints, All Souls Day. So the veils are thin. We're in Scorpio season. I walked this morning. Actually, it was this morning at like 11 a.m. and the moon was still in the sky with the sun in a clear blue sky. It was amazing. So it feels really magical to me. So Deb, thank you for being here and welcome.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so I guess we'll just dive right in. So Alexis, so that you know some of how I work, this is basically playing charades and telephone with the spirit world. So it could be your departed loved ones, your soul may decide to speak, your guides may decide to speak. I just open it up to whatever you need for your best and highest good, for your best and highest healing at this moment. If I ask you a question for validation, it's yes, no, I don't know. Don't be afraid to tell me no, because again, telephone and charades, I might get something wrong. And so if it doesn't fit, if it doesn't feel right, just say it, because then I'll go back to spirit and ask for further clarification so that we can get on what they're showing me, saying, get the right interpretation so I get the message right to you. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
All right. Any questions before we jump in?
No, I'm ready. Excited to see what comes.
All righty. Let's see. Let's go in. Okay, your soul is where I'm being pulled to first. And there's something about this quiet void. Let's see what that is about. I'm feeling that your soul is bringing up the fact and making me feel in this quiet void. There's been a lot of self-introspection lately. You've really been going inside and going deep, because you're sitting in this spot where, what's my next step? I feel like there's like different paths. You have a few different alleys that you're looking at and evaluating, like, which is the best for me. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So your soul is funny. And funny in the way that it's like you are taking this very seriously, and like it's with almost like I'm feeling like this military precision with like lists of pros and cons down each, and really like diving deep down each, and what does it look like and what does it feel like. And your soul's giggling at you. It's like, it doesn't need to be all of this deep down into the weeds. Like, no decision, whichever decision you make, whichever path, you're not limited to one of these roads either. Whichever one you choose is good. And if you want to choose a couple, that's good too. Like, your soul's asking for this lightness to be your approach, as opposed to like your very analytical, over analyzing kind of way of being. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Let's see if we can dive into those choices. So it's interesting. Your soul is taking me back in time. It's taking me back to earlier in your life, and around decision making. And that's why this is coming to a head right now, because there have been situations throughout your life. There's these different, you have a love-hate relationship with decisions, because from an early age, you weren't allowed any decisions. And then once you got older and you started making decisions you felt were right and good turned out to be bad decisions. And so it's like with all of this, like you've got a lot of decision baggage is what your soul is calling coming with you. And so it's like when you hit this point, it's like it's the way you approach decisions, especially what your soul is calling things you term life and death decisions. It's something that you feel like all of this past stuff has really made it so that you want to be sure you make the right decision. You want to be sure and do all your homework and legwork. And it's funny because again, like your soul is so light and like it's just laughing at all of this. It's like you've learned your lessons in making decisions, and you've hit this point in your development and in your life experience where it's like you can sniff a rat out now if you need to. Like it's not like you're going to be hoodwinked like you were in the past when you've made some decisions. Like you can sniff it out and you know it. And you have this really beautiful ability at saying to feel into the decisions and really feel into like what feels right. But there's still this element of distrust in your mental body because you were burned in the past when you felt into things. But your soul is saying like oh God, it's so funny. I'm seeing like the Virginia Slims like ad commercial, like you've come a long way, baby. So just feel into it. Like treat this like you would, like they're saying, like deciding what you're going to wear or what you're going to eat. Feel into it as you would that and saying like, does that feel good or doesn't it? And that's a good decision. It's like there's just been this line drawn in your life where the person that you were and the person you are now, like it's vastly different. And you have that ability to really feel in and trust. So even though like your little brain is going to freak out saying, oh my God, you can't feel into these decisions, do it anyways, because that memory, that experience from a long time ago just needs to take its way out of your field, because you can feel in now from this really solid, grounded place, fully connected to the earth, fully connected to spirit, and you can feel in and make that decision very clearly and very confidently. Now, your soul is saying that doesn't mean that just because you make this decision from this really good feeling place, that there aren't going to be problems. There aren't going to be little hiccups along the way, right? Because what fun is life if like everything goes along perfectly? That's not why we're here. We're here to experience. So there's still going to be some hiccups, but your soul is cautioning you not to go back to that old way of being where you would have been like, oh my God, I made a mistake. This isn't turning out right. Problems are coming up. Holy shit, I made the wrong decision. What did I do? And like go back to the drawing board, right? We're not doing that anymore. We're going from like, yeah, I need to learn from this. What is this going to teach me? And yeah, it may suck, but it's going to be okay. I still made the right decision. I have to keep holding that longer vision and that longer feeling of where I'm heading. And this is just a little bump in the road. Even though your soul is making me feel like there's going to be, let's put it this way, regardless of which path, I feel like it's paths. I feel like you're going to do a hybrid. I feel like I'm flipping a little psychic now, that you're going to do a hybrid of some of those paths, but there's like going to be hiccups regardless of what you do. Your soul is chiming in and saying like the only way there are no hiccups is if you just stay stagnant. So it's like dive in deep and fully, and there's something about learning a lesson with that shift of perspective of looking at problems and issues as a welcome educational opportunity for your soul and spirit growth. And it's like, it kind of feels like this is like your grand entrance into, like, after you get through some of these obstacles in that new frame of mind, that it's like, there's like, I'm hearing all kinds of cheering. It's almost like you graduated, like you're in, like, you'll be in this new state of being that, like, it's beyond your wildest dreams, like just how much there's just going to be this total shift in approach and just way of being on all levels. Let's see. That feels like that's about it. Let me see if your soul has anything else to share. Okay, in order to work through some of this, your soul is calling it, like, in order to help you to bridge the gap between old Alexis and new Alexis, who's going to be okay with making those heart-centered feeling decisions. When you get nervous about, I'm heading down this path, and you can just feel your body sort of tense, get this shift in approaching decisions. Journaling. There's something about journaling with you that, like, I feel like that's like your method, if that makes sense. It's like journaling, but it's like, it's not only just journaling. I feel like you do doodling too. There's this little mishmash of things, to really do that, because there's something about you getting those worries, concerns, all that noise in your head, getting that out on paper and being able to see it and then burn it. It's like, just do that core dump, burn it. And every time that anxiety comes up, approach it that way, because it's like your soul saying that's a way, that's the most effective way for you to get that old mindset, that old approach out of your field. So it's just right. And it doesn't even have to be like, there will be days I'm seeing where you just have to write like 2 or 3 sentences or draw some kind of picture. I'm seeing like the Ghostbuster circle with the X through it, like just stuff like just little quick things like that some days that just get it moving. Because it's like, it's just clearing that excess debris out of your field, so that I'm whole, full, connected, and working as I do now is fully in place, and the old goes on its way out into the ether, back into the Akasha. Let's see. I think that's it. Any questions?
No, but it makes sense and it resonates.
That's what I always enjoy. So yeah, well, good. Well, that was fun. Your soul is very playful and very light. Yeah, it was really fun. It was really fun to have something. It's just such exuberance, that your soul set out there. It's really beautiful.
Thank you. I love that. Yeah, I like that my soul is, that feels right. That my soul is like, has the crowd cheering and lightness and the, like, yeah, that exuberance.
It like knowing you, it all fit. I'm like, so like I said, Deb and Alexis haven't had any contact before. We set this up really intentionally with me acting as intermediary. Like we had separate communication strings and the whole thing until it came the point that I sent out the link for our gathering here. Alexis, do you want to start with kind of question pieces, or do you want me to go? Because I've got a couple. I actually wrote some down.
Sure. Well, I am curious as far as, in particular, I guess, with the mediumship and the people who have passed, and I guess it can be really in any way, because things can always kind of poke at us, right? And so I know we had set this up a while ago. We had set this up and we had never had contact. But what is it like for you to walk around knowing that these things have access to you, but that you aren't always available to, right? Like have these things come in? Like, what is that like for you?
Let's see. Well, in order to actually work, I try to like set up a few things that it's like until I light my candle and I give you guys permission, let me have a life. But they don't always do that, and my guides are rather freewheeling sometimes. So it's hard though, because it's, I remember, like being on a subway in Shanghai, and there was this dead old guy who was this old guy on the subway, his grandfather, and like he wanted to talk to his son, and I'm like, I'm in China without an interpreter, like this can't happen. But he was very insistent, and I just had to tell him, yeah, thanks, but we can't. And then other times if something happens, I'll just ask the person, because I don't believe in like just walking around saying, hi, your dead grandma's here and wants to talk to you now. So I try to keep them at bay unless it's something that is absolutely life and death important, that it has to come through right then and there. So, but it makes life very interesting, like my grandfather hangs out with me all the time. I'll spot one of the dogs roaming the house. So it makes life interesting for sure.
I can imagine.
I'm going to kind of piggyback off of that question, because I know how my gifts, my sixth senses feel in my body and how I perceive them in my system. How does mediumship feel in your system? Is it clairaudient? Is it clairvoyant? Is it clairsentient? Like, how does it show up for you in an embodied way?
All of the above. I will hear things. I will feel things, especially when a lot of times the way a person died, I won't so much like hear heart attack, but what I will feel is I will feel a heart attack. The other night I did a reading. It was the person had passed from an overdose. I felt the overdose as he passed. I will see things in my mind's eye. And then sometimes just flat out knowing stuff. So I really pull on just about everything. And that's like what I find so exciting about this, is because walking in, if I've read you, if I've never read you versus if I've read you several times, I never know what I'm walking into, because each time is different, and different spirits work in different ways. And it makes it fun and exciting for me too, because it's like, let's see where they take us today.
So when did these different abilities and gifts start to show themselves to you? Like when did have you always had this from when you were young, or did it kind of develop? What was that like for you?
I've always had it. I just didn't know that it was something a little different. Some of my earliest memories of childhood is me talking to my grandfather. He died when my mom was like 9 or 10 years old. I never knew him. Nobody in our family ever really spoke about him, but I just always knew Gramps was there, and I would talk to him and he'd solve some of my problems when I couldn't find things. So, and then like over the years, it sort of waned, and then it kicked up one day, big time, in probably my late 20s. And I was seeing my dead cousin in the basement in the garage, and my grandfather was popping light bulbs in the house. And that's when it just sort of started a life of its own.
My mind is just blowing, so just give me a second here. Is there a difference in the feeling of soul, working with soul versus working with guides versus working with ancestors?
Yes, for me there is. It's a very different feeling. I find it very interesting because the soul and the guides, they speak very clearly to me. It's the departed souls, all the dead people who, that's where it's more the game of charades and telephone, and they speak very metaphorically, and they use my brain. This is as I date myself, as a Rolodex. It's like, what does she know that we can pull on that will get me to the message I'm trying to deliver? So dead people are much harder for me than guides or the soul.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Well, that's fascinating too, of like, as you were talking, I'm thinking that makes a lot of sense, because it's almost like there's we have that direct connection with soul versus having to, they're trying to find out, okay, what can be the message that will get through, and that also their person they want to talk to will get, right? It's kind of like, has to go through a few steps. So yeah, that's very fascinating. It makes a lot of sense. Because I've never really, I have experience with, the others, but as far as departed souls, I haven't experienced that myself. So I do have a question, actually, that brings me to this next question, since we are in the time of Halloween, and the veils are thin. Like there are, you can set up an altar and put pictures of your ancestors, and right, there's a celebration of our loved ones. Are there ways that you have found for people to connect with those who have passed?
For me, what my peeps, and when I use the term peeps, that's my collective umbrella for every, all of our unseen entourage, our guides, our angels, our dead people, the whole shebang. The most important thing is talking to them. It's that idea that it's, out of sight, out of mind. But in reality, it's like they're always hanging around. And so it's talking to them, and then also, asking for signs. But then the problem is, if you ask for a sign, you can't run around and be oblivious either, right? Because, I had a client where it was like, I keep asking, but I don't see it. And then she mentioned, the light bulb kept going out in her lamp. And I just wanted to shake her, because I'm like, it's right there, So, so I think really it's being open to the possibility that, they're going to, the people that we love that have crossed over really work really hard to come down into our plane to give us these signs. And it's like, you have to keep an eye open too. But really, it's what they continually show me is the talking to them and continuing that relationship, and then also giving them permission to like help you in your life, right? Because even though we have free will, they just can't hop in and help us. So we have to give them permission, and they'll come in and help us. In fact, that was just a reading I had the other night. The person was really struggling in some areas in their life, and one of the departed relatives said, all you got to do is pray. But our definition of pray is different. It's talking to us and giving us permission to help you, because we'll help you to see the right path. We'll help put people in your path so that you can go on to the next, stage of your life. But it's that asking, being willing and open, and then, paying attention, and then also doing some of your work too.
So good. So basically, we just need to ask for help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know I have certainly seen people talk about malevolent ancestors or people that get stuck on this side. Is that something you experience, or is deceased simply deceased?
In terms of malevolent, there's always some people, there's always some things. I'm not going to call it people. I'm going to call it entities as opposed to a departed soul. That's the malevolent that I have experienced. In terms of, though, a dead person, if they were a really crappy person while they were alive here, it could be for various reasons. They were playing a role for somebody, because that's a lot of times what they've shown me is, in order to help their son's soul grow, they had a contract, and they were supposed to, a father was supposed to play a really awful character. But then once they go over to the other side, they've let all of that stuff go. But when they come in, they'll show me some of the less than positive things that they did in this lifetime, because that serves as evidence for the sitter to understand who that soul is. But they're over on the other side. They don't care. It doesn't matter anymore. So
yeah, it's part of our soul contracts,
yeah,
of who we are as teachers and learners for each other. And then just piggybacking off that question, I know I have an ancestor that has stepped up as an ascended master, and you call them your peeps. I call mine my spirit posse. Like, they're my animals and my ancestors and my guides. They're my spirit posse. So I totally feel that. Is there a difference between like an ascended master coming in and somebody who hasn't stepped in as an active regular guide or an ascended master for somebody?
They tend to feel more like a guide for me, because I'm thinking, in fact, when I did your reading, like, remember, I had a hard time placing
The light.
exactly who that person was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was an interesting day, because it was like I was going in full on medium, and it was like, wait a minute, there's something different here. So
Okay. I was just wondering, like, how things feel different. Alexis, you're up.
I don't know, unless there's anything like, as we're talking, is there anything that you're just wanting to share, or that's coming up for you as we're just, kind of, just kind of exploring this realm.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things that that we touched on is the whole thing of free will, right? The peeps always love to bring that up because that's one of the I think that's one of the things they've shown me that it's important that I propagate out into the world, is the fact that, we're not here alone. We're not stuck. We don't have to suffer, all the time. And it's really having that openness to ask for help. The key is you have to ask every day, because those are the glorious rules of free will, right? So it's almost like, oh, it's funny. They're showing me Cinderella like scampering from the ball because, at midnight, everything goes back to normal. And so that's the only real catch in asking for help and giving them permission to help you, is you have to do it daily. So it's building that little trigger in your brain. And, for a long time, I used to have a little stick-it note on my bathroom window just saying, remember to ask, to prompt me to make that habit. Because it's like they're all here ready and waiting to assist us, but we don't know that we can ask them. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy, every morning I just say, hey peeps, I give you permission to help me in any way you see fit today. And that's it. And then if I have something big coming up during the day, if I have like a really big meeting or something, I'll say, hey, help me find the words, give me the ideas, like help me make it through this meeting and come out unscathed. And it helps. It makes a huge difference.
It does.
And then they're excited because they get to, that's part of their job over there on the other side, is to help guide us and shepherd us, and help us miss some pitfalls sometimes. So they're super duper happy too, because they get to interact with us.
I love that. Yeah. And I always, I love to quote Megan Watterson, who wrote Mary Magdalene Revealed. She says, spirit is ethical. You have to ask in order to receive. And I think that goes right for and it's almost like, what do you feel connected to? Like if you do feel really connected to, like, maybe a parent that's passed away, and like, that's who you want to connect with, and you have that trust, right? Or maybe you have a deep trust with soul, spirit, whatever it is, that no matter what it is, you have to ask. And give that permission. And I think that's just, a really good reminder too, as we move into, we're moving into eclipse season, we're moving into like the end of the year, this final push, like any challenges that we're faced. Remember, you can ask for help from any of these, right, places or things.
Beautiful. I love this asking for help. It's certainly something that I do. Part of my morning prayer is, please use me in the highest good. Show me the way. Like, make it loud. I have a number of little things depending on what the day is. We have really focused on the mediumship portion of what you bring to the world. Tell us a little bit about the energy healing side of things.
Sure. Several years ago, I started down the path. I kept seeing this little Facebook ad for a Reiki class, and I had no clue what I was walking into, but I said, if you keep showing it to me, I guess I've got to plunk the money down and go. So I did. So this little energy healing adventure started with traditional Reiki, and then it just blossomed. I do medical Qigong as well. I added angelic Reiki to the mix. And then there's always just the fun piece of, again, whatever the client's peeps want this person to have. I'm just the PVC pipe, and I listen and I do. So yeah, so that's a fun part of like my session, my energy healing sessions. It's like just use all these modalities that I have in my little Rolodex again. And what does this person need to be balanced, to be fully, have their spirit fully back into their body and to feel like themselves again. And then typically too, then their guides usually chime in at some point to give them homework about some aspect of their life that they need to work on. So
fabulous. And do you do in-person healing, or is it all, I hate the word virtual, so I'm going to say distance or online?
yeah, so I do both. I do in person as well as I call it remote. And then I really actually enjoy the remotes more. I think it's especially fun for the client, for us to be far apart. And as we work, I'll usually keep them on the phone. And as we work through things, even though there's that distance, they still have that sensation like, I knew you were working over on my shoulders. And it almost, I like to think a lot of times that it's almost a much more heightened sensation because we are remote, because I think spirit really wants to drive home the fact that we are energy and we all are connected. But I enjoy my in-persons too, because it's really nice at the end for me to see this person who came in worried and stressed and constricted, and to see them walking out giggling and laughing and just free. It's really gratifying that spirit uses me in that manner.
Beautiful.
I love that. I almost feel like Reiki, for a lot of people I know and for myself, is like kind of the like first little nugget they drop, like, here, try this. And then it, I know for me, it opened I was the only one in my Reiki class who was having like crazy stuff happening. But it's almost that too, of like you said, and you listened, right? Like you kept getting the sign to do this thing, right? And you listened, you felt really called to it. And it opened in ways that you couldn't have imagined at the time. But I know for myself and for some other people, Reiki seems to be a nice little doorway in. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I call it my gateway drug.
I was actually, that's exactly like the phrase that came into my mind when Alexis was saying like that Reiki is this doorway that opens to other things. I was like, oh yeah, it's a gateway drug.
I feel that way about yoga too. I know a lot of people, because they feel, right, it's like they feel comfortable with these things. It's like everybody knows yoga. They use Reiki in hospitals. Like they're like, okay, this is a piece my brain can like understand. But then once the door is open, it's like, okay, great. All systems go, and all the things that can come from that. Yeah, it's just really, I find, those things that are the more common or the more, well-known Reiki yoga, those are the gateways for sure.
Yeah. For those of us that are body workers, like, I was a massage therapist for years. That's a gateway drug. Like, yeah, I do massage, kind of not, I don't do massage anymore. I do cranial sacral therapy now, which is the accepted common knowledge thing. Oh, she's a cranial sacral therapist and she's all these other things. So like, we've all got our gateways that we use to open up the doors and be like, here's this whole other world. Here's the 99% of everything that we don't see and touch and feel. Yay. Love it.
Yeah. And I would just say too, for anyone who's feeling like, they get a nudge to, even if it doesn't make sense to them, even if they're like, I'm never going to do Reiki on another person, or I don't know why this like thought is coming up, or whatever it is, trust it, because you don't know what will come of it, right? Even, you can do things for yourself. You can do Reiki on yourself. And like we have, like we are all examples of what comes next, who knows? So yeah, trust if you are feeling to do whatever, even if it makes no sense to you. If you're like, I'm never gonna use this, or you know, whatever. Yeah, I love that was coming up.
Yeah, because
Fabulous.
exactly, that's how I felt. Like if you would have ever told me 10 years ago that I would be sitting here, because day job is IBM, like opposite end of the spectrum, and now it's like I'm up to here in this other world, and it's beautiful. Like with Reiki, if you would have ever told me I would take clients, I would have said no. Would you teach it? No. And like teaching is like one of the things that like lights me up to no end, seeing all these people who come in, my students, that say, yeah, well, things, this weird thing happens, that weird thing happened. And I'm like, sweetie, nothing is weird. Like, this is the land that weird lives in. So welcome home, and let's go dive deep. It's great.
I love that.
I heard this beautiful term recently, sacred arts. So many of us have, the woo or the woo woo, which is kind of this like got this derision to it. And what we're doing is we're working in the sacred arts. We're working in healing. We're working in infusing spirit back into the three-dimensional world and upgrading the vibratory level of all of this. In quantum physics, everything is particle and frequency. And so I'm like, oh, I work in the sacred arts. Because I used to go with like, oh, I'm the weird girl, or, I'm really woo woo, or I'm very out there. I'm shifting my language, and I'm like, I work in the sacred arts. Like, this is sacred, and I work in bringing in the sacredness to this. So you're a sacred arts worker. You're a sacred arts worker.
Yeah, I like it.
Any other questions, Alexis, for Deb? Any last things to drop in? I'm going to have our little skeletal unicorn here is going to make an appearance.
No, I love it. I think it's brought up a lot of great points too, just, in many different ways for like everyone to feel into as they're listening. But no, it was beautiful. And thank you for offering to do a reading, not knowing what was going to come up, not knowing, what it was going to be like. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Fabulous.
No, it's great fun.
Deb, do you have anything else you want to add, or that you want people to know? Or if people want to reach you for a session, if they're like, oh, this is something that I'm really curious about, where do they do that? So anything you want to add, and how do people get a hold of you?
Let's see. I think probably the thing that's coming up right now is just, it's like, don't be afraid of it. Whether it's a reading or any sort of healer that you want to go to, it's like, just if it feels right and you feel called to go, like, readings should never be anything bad. That's the important thing about spirit. Spirit is never going to tell you what to do, or demand anything from you. If they ever do, you run the other way, because that's not spirit. Spirit will always just lovingly share its insights and thoughts, but the choice is always up to you, because this is your life and your experience, and they honor that. So
Fabulous. If someone wanted to work with you, so second part of the question, how would they get a hold of you? And we will drop this information in the show notes as well.
Sure. You can just go directly onto my website. It's restoringyou.co. Important part is the CO and not .com, because some person has the .com held hostage for an extreme amount of money. So just restoringyou.co.
Fabulous. I love it. So thank you, Deb, for like bringing this in. I loved my reading with you when I did my reading. And when Alexis was like, maybe Deb could do a live reading, it just felt so good and so juicy. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, Deb.
Yes, thank you. It was fun. I appreciate your time.